Welcome to our program today. My name's Susan, and we're here doing the Oldsmar Library's first ever online crafting program. So today for our program, we're going to be doing a beginner cross-stitching tutorial. The last couple of weeks, we've been handing out these packs for you to be able to pick up, these little kits, to get you started with cross-stitching. And today we're going to go through and do a little instruction on how to cross stitch. So first we're going to go through what exactly is in this kit that you picked up at the library. First thing in the kit is this little paper that has our program information on it, and on the back is our pattern that we're going to be doing today. We're going to be making a little heart cross stitch. I have a finished product right here if you want to take a look at that. So that's going to be our pattern. We have our cloth, which is this, it's called 14 count Aida or Ada, either pronunciation is fine, but it's a cloth that you can see has many little squares and many little holes. So we have that. We have this, which is our needle minder, which is basically just a button with a magnet on it, but it holds your needle so that you don't lose it or drop it or, you know, someplace to keep it safe. And then we also have our thread, and this is a 321, it's the number, it's DMC thread. This is the kind you see at the craft stores and all of the little sections back in the cross-stitching section. So that's what we're going to be using for our heart thread. And we have this, which is our needle threader, which just helps make it a lot easier to get the thread through the needle. So the first thing we're going to do to get started is we're going to take our cloth and find the center. Whenever you're starting a cross-stitch project, the easiest place to start is in the center. So you want to find the center of the cloth. The easiest way to do that is to fold it in half and then fold it in half again, so that when you unfold it, you have kind of a little mark where the center is going to be, and that's where we're going to start our pattern. The next thing we're going to do is thread our needle. Now you have this lovely piece of string, but we're not going to be using the whole piece of string, because if you look at the holes on the fabric, they're very tiny. The string is very thick, so the way that the string works, it's actually not one piece of string, it's 6. So you need to separate. If you start separating some of the ends, you'll see that it's actually made up of 6 other tiny little threads. Try to separate that so you can see it. So the easiest way to separate it is to find one of the threads. I've got one of them out here. Just grab it and then pull it out from the rest of the pile. That's actually what we're going to be working with for cross stitch, and then we can just take this and put it to the side and use it in case we need to get more thread. So what we're going to do to get started with our first stitch, we're going to start with a loop stitch. And what we're going to do is thread our needle so that we can start with the loop stitch. And how you do that is you take both of the ends of your thread and put it together, like so. So you have one end that has a loop, and the other end is like this, with the two ends together. So threading the needle, if you've never used a needle threader before, it's pretty simple. You just take your needle threader and put it through the eye of your needle, so it hangs like that. And then what you're going to do is take the ends of your thread and stick it through this larger hole, like so. And then to thread the needle, you just pull this through, and you have your threaded needle. So on one end, you have your loop, and then on the other end, you just have the end of your thread. Now to get started, we're going to take our fabric and our needle minder, which is really just a button with a magnet on it and then another magnet on the back. That goes onto your cloth, and then we're going to find the approximate center of our fabric. And you just want to start, you can just pick anywhere, just close to the center, and just pull it through, but you don't want to pull it through all the way. So you want to take this, put it back through the other hole, and then when you're making your first stitch, keep the loop out and then just pull it through. So what we're going to do, I'm going to demonstrate how to do this again with the loop stitch, but on a bit of a larger canvas so you can see. We have our thread, our needle and thread that's threaded with our loop at the bottom. We find where we want to start from the bottom and pull it up through the fabric, but making sure that we don't pull it through all the way. You want to go diagonally across, that's why it's a cross stitch. Pull it through, and then to finish your stitch so you have a nice secure knot, just put it through the loop and pull the thread through. And that is how you get started with a loop stitch. So you have half of your cross stitch done here. To finish off the stitch, you just go to the opposite corner and cross over and go back down. And that's it. You've done a cross stitch. So you just have to do that several dozen more times before you finish the heart. This is what it should look like. This is one little stitch that's going to be the bottom of our heart. Now on your pattern, all you need to do is follow through and count with the squares to finish the pattern. Since we're just using one color, it's pretty simple. I've marked the first stitch with a 1, so that was the stitch you just did. Next, you want to move up to the next row and do 3 on top. And I will demonstrate that again on the larger piece. So here we have our first stitch, our X, and then we need to do the 3 that are directly above it. So we're going to start, and what you want to do, what's important in cross stitch to complete your piece and make it look pretty, is that you want to make sure all of the stitches go in the same direction. So if your first stitch went this way and then you crossed over that way, you want to do them all the same way to make sure it looks neat. So for the next row, which is 3, we're going to bring this up through here for this square. And do that stitch. Now, when you're doing a row that's all the same color, it's a little easier to do them, instead of each X, to do one line at a time. I'll demonstrate so you can see how that works. So instead of doing like we did the last time with the crossover, we're going to just go for the next row. Do our next stitch, and then the third stitch. There you go. Now you have half of the next row done. So then you just want to finish that off. And complete the rest of your X's. If you're doing this and you're a beginner, it's always easiest to make sure that your string doesn't get all knotted, to try and keep it as short as possible. And then sometimes if it gets twisted, you can just let it go and it'll untwist, and it makes it a little bit easier to use. And there we go. Now to finish off your pattern, you just want to finish following the pattern through the fabric and then leaving blanks where there aren't any colored squares. It's basically like a paint by numbers, but with needle and thread. So we've got our next row, and say you get to the point where you have run out of thread and you don't have anything left. The best way to do that, to change your thread, you want to finish off the stitch first. And how you do that, you don't want to tie a knot in the thread. You can, but sometimes there's always a factor, there's always a risk of the knot coming back through the fabric or making it lumpy on the back. So the best way to finish off before you want to change your thread and start a new piece is take your needle and just slide the thread underneath your existing stitches on the back of your cross stitch. So that will keep it safe and so that it doesn't move around anywhere. Then you cut your excess, start again, just rethread your needle and then start again with the loop stitch and continue stitching. All right, so after you've finished your thread and gone through and finished the rest of your pattern, all right, so now you know the basics of cross stitching. That's really all it is to get started. Once you're finished, this is what you're going to have, is this cute little heart. If you're interested in doing more cross stitching, you can go to your local craft store and find all the supplies there. You can find patterns. We have books here that have lots of small patterns. I recommend, if you're a beginner, just to stick with the smallest and simplest patterns possible. At the craft stores, you can also get kits that have everything in them already, with all the needle and the thread and a hoop, but pretty much that's all it is to get started cross stitching. And if you have any questions or have any other thoughts or problems that you might encounter, just don't hesitate to send us an email. It's information@oldsmarlibrary.org. Just put a cross stitch in the subject line, or you can comment on this video and we'll try to get back to you and answer your questions, okay? Thanks for watching.